love my dogs. I just love my dogs, and my golden is 13 now, so he's an elder statesman. But what I love about being around them for so many years is watching and learning and appreciating their what I would call their eccentricities, but what is actually their innate inherent wisdom. So if you have dogs, you probably have the same experience where they love to eat grass. And it's not just any kind of grass. It's a very particular kind of grass. And so I've learned over the years what kind of grass it is. I've learned what yards in the neighborhood have that grass. And I've learned where in our backyard there are patches of that grass, and I sort of leave it sort of like as an organic salad bar. Because what I know is that they have wisdom that if their systems don't feel quite up to par, they go to the salad bar. And they just munch and munch and munch away. The same grass is on this side of this building. So you know, if you're here, I bring my boys with me all the time. And so when we walk and we go to that far end of the building, that same grass is there. So I've learned through them, through observation. And I've learned to appreciate and to accommodate their inherent need to go eat grass. Because what I know and what I appreciate is the fact that I didn't have to teach them. I didn't say, you need to eat your vegetables. You need to eat your grass. They just do it. And so what I love about that is it reminds me of that word inherent. Inherent. That thing which is instinctual. That which is a part of. What I love about the word inherent is it also is the root of inheritance. And so when I think about the fact that all of us have these inherent gifts, that it is our inheritance to not go acquire them, but to accept them because they are instinctual. They are a part of us. So as I was watching the boys very early yesterday morning eating grass, I thought, isn't it ludicrous? What if there was a global initiative to eradicate all of the grass that existed on the planet? Like somebody came up with the idea that that was bad. And so because they came up with that idea and because they put a lot of energy, effort, and finances into the fact that it's bad, that it started this groundswell of a movement where we were all supposed to go now and eradicate all of the natural grasses that grow through the valleys, through the pastures, through the mountainsides, through public yards, and we were to eliminate all of those things. And then as that groundswell initiative began to grow, the mindset of us as a species of humans would begin to consider the fact that, well, maybe this is right, and then we would begin to look at that grass with a different lens, a different perception. And then our neighbors would start removing all of it and putting those sort of pebble gardens like they do in Palm Springs everywhere. And so we might be one of the last people holding out, having lawns. And so we would start to feel bad. And then suddenly our whole sensibility about this idea of grass is looking at it as something that is wrong. And that is ludicrous, isn't it? Can you imagine the energy that it would take for a populace of the world to begin to adopt such an initiative? And you would agree with me that that would be absolutely ridiculous, because grass, as a part of nature, just has this inherent ability to grow. There is those natural kind that my dogs eat that just grow. I didn't have to plant it. And so when I think about things that are inherent, when I think about things that just naturally grow, I have to think about you and I. And I have to think about the fact that inside of us is an inherent seed of potentiality, which is a product of that which is intelligence. You see, it is inherent within us that we are intelligent, whole, divine beings, because what we are a part of is that which is the one. And think about how much energy we have expended in suppressing our inherent divinity. Isn't that equally as ludicrous? And yet, We have become accustomed to doing that simply because of observation, simply because of domestication and the way in which we have been raised in the world. We have created an unconscious initiative to suppress something that is inherent. And so we grow up thinking that it's acceptable to think of ourselves as unworthy. We grow up thinking that it's acceptable to condemn ourselves or to condemn another person when all of us are a part of the one. And I want you to think about the level of energy that it takes for you and I to keep that up. And yet that is what we are doing, but nobody walks around going, isn't that ridiculous? At least on a widespread level. And so what we begin to propagate and what we begin to see over and over again is the idea that it's doable or possible to suppress something that is inherent. And guess what? That doesn't last very long. Because something that is inherent, are you ready? Cannot be denied. And if you and I are denying our inherent worth, if you and I are denying our inherent flexibility and our adaptability to change, to maturing, to conscious growing, to all of the things that are a part of that inheritance that is ours, if you deny or forget or believe that you don't have that, you are expending a great amount of energy in suppressing something that is the normalcy of you. And so something that inherent then is what I like to term is as a part of our always, ALWAYS, as a part of our always, and exhibits itself in all ways. So always and in all ways, that which is our inheritance is flashing before our eyes and presenting itself to us continuously over and over and over again. I wrote about this in the Science of Mind Daily Guides for the month of August, actually yesterday, and I called it Universal Tough Love, because the universe will not let up in reminding us of our inherent gifts, because it can't. It is universal energy, and that universal energy is not something that can be suppressed, and yet you and I can expend a great amount of our own personal energy trying to suppress universal energy. And so I wrote that the universe is perpetually giving us opportunities to observe and appreciate our own evolution. One even might say that it insists upon it. Our fear in resisting such a gift, think about it. Our fear in resisting such a gift is the universe showcasing to us our beautiful evolution. And the fear that we have in that is that we then interpret that gift as unattainable. Or we interpret that gift and we watch other people accepting that gift of their universal energy, and then we judge it. And then we receive it almost as if a gut punch, because we're looking at other people and we're saying that their inheritance is natural and my inheritance is not. And suddenly I'm making other people wrong by being in alignment when I'm the one that's out of alignment. The universe cannot stop offering what it is. It cannot stop offering what it is. It is a boundless field of divine order and infinite expansion. So our choice is then either to abolish the fear that we have about receiving this inherent gift, or let that fear expand, which will then brew its own special kind of hate for the ones who seem to have it all. Do you see that that's really the dynamic behind that? The dynamic behind judging other people is we're judging their ability to dissolve any resistance to the inherent gifts of the universe, when that's what you and I have the ability to do right now. It isn't an acquisition, it is an allowing. And so even when we choose to linger in this lie, the resistance of our innate inherent gifts and ignore the inclusive nature of life, the life principle does not ignore us. Don't you love that? It will not allow itself to separate from us because it can't. It simply keeps revealing itself. It reveals success. It reveals expansion. It reveals love all around us through all of the other exemplifications of life that we are surrounded by. And we either get to champion and say, hooray for you for allowing the innate gift of the universe to express as you, hooray for you for doing that, or in my unconscious, forgetful state, I can judge you for that. But who receives the diminishment of that judgment? Not the people that it's directed to, myself. This is what Joseph Campbell called this strike. He said the universe always strikes you at your weakest point because that's what most needs strengthening. I never really understood. I thought that was the most curious quote when he said the universe always strikes you at your weakest point because that's what most needs strengthening. It means that the universe, in all of its wisdom and the wisdom that is within us, is trying to go and to target at all of the places of denial that exist within us in order to facilitate us to wake up. It strikes us at our weakest in order to showcase the fact that that which we have labeled weak is a fallacy. Call it the greatest act of tough love, but the universe comprises of incomparable devotion. It won't ever let up because in and of itself it is love, and love never lets up. So it is always there in all ways. And it is our opportunity then to begin to see how that works. Things that are inherent, things that are innate. We have great judgment on people who are abusers. But if we don't honor that which is our inheritance, then we are abusing our inheritance. We are actually creating self-abuse by not honoring the inheritance of our gifts. So nature in and of itself is inherent. It just does what it does. What we've done with nature is we've labeled it as good or bad. So when nature exemplifies itself through the realm of a tornado, what do we call the tornado? A tragedy. Is it really a tragedy? Or is it nature operating from its innate state? When an earthquake happens and there are casualties within the human populace, is it that the earthquake in and of itself is bad? Or is the earthquake just an exemplification of the changing of nature, the tectonic plates that are needing to move around? What makes us label those particular things that are inherent or natural about nature wrong? It's because our relationship with it is skewed. So hear me out. When there are casualties in these particular examples, we want to label those things as tragedy. We label them as tragedy because there is still a belief that life in and of itself is limited. When in actuality, what our souls do is when we transition from one experience to the next, it's just like walking from one room into the other. Those people who have been a part of the situation of a natural occurrence have transitioned from one experience to the other. That's not being crass or cold. It's simply looking at the spiritual concept of the eternality of life. It doesn't also mean that in our humanity we don't grieve and mourn to those particular things from a human awareness. But if we were to step back into the lens of the spiritual, we would know that there's an eternality that is going on there. What makes nature do its thing? What makes a forest fire, what makes lightning strike brush and cause a forest fire? What makes a tornado occur? What makes the earth shake through that which is an earthquake? What makes those things happen? Is it a natural, inherent part of its cycle? do we then as human beings learn how to be in relationship with that? Is it a bad thing, again, or is it an inherent thing? And I bring this up because I want you to look at how we label things that are inherent as bad, as we also label inherent things about us as unattainable. What I love is when you really look at history, you will notice that when nature does its thing, sometimes it brings out the best in humanity. For example, in March of 2011, just recently, do you remember the earthquake that struck one of the coasts of Japan? I think it was the eastern side of. It was probably the first that we were able to see footage, because people who survived had their cell phones, and you could see the tsunami that then came in. This was just a few years ago, and wiped out just massive amounts of property and did all kinds of damage, and people's lives, were lost in that effect. And there was a school teacher, an English teacher by the name of Ann Thomas, who was living in Sadai, which was at the heart, the epicenter of this particular devastated region. And she wrote, a few days after that, she was able to get a message out to friends of hers. And she was sharing her inspiring view of the difficulties. She said, in the aftermath, people had come together. They shared water, food, and a kerosene heater. We sleep lined up in one room. We eat by candlelight, and we share stories. It is a warm and a friendly and a beautiful, exquisite experience. Those with the good fortune of running water posted signs so others could come and fill up their buckets. People keep saying, this is how it used to be in the old days when everyone helped one another. Without water, people could not bathe or shower. Yet Anne saw a blessing even in this. She says, we feel gross and grubby. But there are more important concerns than that for us now. I love this peeling away of non-essentials. Living fully on the level of instinct, on intuition, of caring of what is needed for survival, not just of me, but for the entire group. And most poetically, the heavens at night are scattered with stars. I usually can only see about 2, but now the whole sky is filled. In her conclusion said, an enormous cosmic evolutionary step is occurring all over the world. I can feel my heart opening very wide. I feel part of something happening much larger than myself. This wave of birthing worldwide is hard, and yet it is magnificent. While many people are focusing on the tragedy and the devastation associated with this disaster, she was finding majesty in the way in which people were coming together to help, the reward returning to essentials. A Zen master once said, now that my house has burned down, I have a much better view of the sky. Now that my house is burned down, so what kind of house can you and I burn down deliberately? And it is the house of our own separateness. This house, this fortress, this walledness that we have built around ourselves that says, I cannot accept my inheritance. And I think that that's the normal way to live, because that's the way in which I see a wide swath of the populace around the world operating. And they're doing so, and we're all doing so from this level of learned survival. But to be able to burn that house down so that I can begin to see the stars, so that I can begin to see truth, so that I can begin to let go of non-essentials. See, what I love is proactivity. I love the fact that you and I have the wisdom and the clarity and the tools and the opportunity to not wait for such occurrences to let the physical house collapse, but that we can begin to let the metaphorical house of separation collapse now and begin to reap the reward and see the stars of our inheritance, so that we can begin to understand and know exactly what it is that you and I are here to do. In the Bhagavad Gita, which I highly implore you to study. It's one of the great masterful stories in the Hindu tradition. And it's basically a conversation between Vishnu, the god, and Arjuna, the disciple or the soldier. And as Vishnu reveals himself to Arjuna as the god, and he dispels all of this wisdom to him, he tells him that our reason for being is one of selfless service. Selfless service. But what the Bhagavad Gita teaches us is selfless service is not a sacrificial lifestyle. Because when I engage in the inherent act, the instinctual act, just like all of those people in Japan were operating from that selfless service, when I engage in that, what I come to understand is I'm not helping someone outside of me. That in the activity of selfless service, I am rediscovering the fact that what I am serving is a part of me, because there is only one self. You see? And so it's not like, oh, look at me and look at what I'm doing. I'm doing it from a gesture and from a commitment and from an intention to get to the awareness that you are not separate from me. That as I give, I am giving to the self with a capital S. And so a life then which is devoted solely on selfless service is really a life of instinct. Isn't it our instinct to want to help? Truly it is, when you think about it. There's the empathic part of us that cannot be denied. It can be told not to be acted upon, not to be foolish, that it's not safe to engage with those types of people. But in its purity, the instinct to serve, to selflessly serve, is already there inside of you and I. When we go back and we reawaken that, then we come to the understanding that as I give to another, it's not that I'm depleting myself. It's very much the analogy of the candle flame. That as I take the flame of the candle that is myself and you light your flame, your eternal knowing from me that nothing within me is diminished, because there is only one eternal flame or one eternal light. And so as Vishnu teaches Arjuna this selfless service, he teaches him that the reason for being is simply that, to serve one another. And that in the serving, you come to the realization that there is only one. He says, try to see then that there is action in inaction, and that there is inaction to action. He said, I could say it like this: even when you are doing a thing, there is something inside of you that rests. And even when you rest, there is something inside of you that is doing. We want both the action and the inaction to be congruent with our instinct. We want to be able to understand and adhere to the fact that you have already won. I've said that many times over the course of the 6 years of being here, is that this isn't a race. Because a race would indicate then that there's a finish line, and a finish line would indicate that somebody had to win. You have already won, and this is not a race, because there is no finish line. The fact that you have won is a part of your inheritance. If you accept that instead of repress that, if you accept that rather than work against that, can you imagine then the energy that is replenished within you and I? rather than the energy being spent in trying to push that away or deny that? What does you have already won mean to you? That there is nothing to fix, that there is nothing to acquire, that the essentials, the ability to see the stars, the ability to connect, the ability to share, the ability to love, is something that is already ever present inside of us. It just needs to be able to give an opportunity to breathe. It's just readily waiting for recognition to become congruent with our choices. So always, always, and in all ways, the universe does not let up in trying to remind you that you have already won. Anything then that is a struggle is what? Forgetfulness. Anything then that is of a separate nature is what? Consciously or unconsciously chosen. Each one of us here, each one in existence, is a part of that inheritance. Do we abuse our inheritance or do we accept it? That becomes the main, the beautiful, the intentional focus and opportunity for each and every one of us. In all ways and in all ways. And so it is. Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Ault, and I simply want to say thanks. Thanks for taking the time to watch our broadcast here at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. We have a vision, and that vision is to reawaken all to their spiritual magnificence. And one of the ways that we are able to do that is through this very medium of broadcasting. So if you got anything out of this, if you felt in any way inspired, or if something spoke to you directly, then I extend an invitation to you to become a part of our family by donating. And there are many ways in order for you to be able to do that. One is to simply go to our website at slca.com, and there you will find all different kinds of prompts that will help you support what it is that we are doing here in Atlanta. One way is to become a pledger. That means that you decide on a monthly basis that you are going to help us with this vision. Another way is to donate through our management system called Fellowship One, another through PayPal, and another even easier way is on your cell phone. You can do what's called text to tithe, and that number is 404-796-7030. Again, thank you so much for your support, and I invite you to come back weekly to see what it is that we're up to. Blessings.